Hi, and welcome to Lori's Happy Stamps 10 Years of Growth Paper Pumpkin, March 2023. I'm really excited to share this set with you. I'm going to quickly go over the 3 samples that Paper Pumpkin suggested, and then I think I have 8 alternatives for you. So let's get going. The first card looks like this, and basically I did exactly as the card showed, but I did bump up the planter with dimensionals, and for the outside of the envelope I stamped Orchid Oasis, and then I colored in with the Stampin' Blends. I used Shaded Spruce and Coastal Cabana, and I mimicked that on the inside of the card as well. So I thought that made a really nice card, and You Deserve the Best. Then you could make it into a happy birthday card. You could make it into a thinking of you card. You could do whatever you want on the inside. So for the second card, I did again exactly as the sample showed, bumped it up on dimensionals though. Again, use the pot on dimensionals, and on the inside I used the colors Shaded Spruce, Coastal Cabana, Polished Pink, and Orchid Oasis. Did the same thing on the envelope. Again, a really nice card to an incredible woman, and inside you could stamp happy birthday, happy anniversary, thinking of you, hope you feel better, happy Mother's Day, all kinds of things. And for the third card, I made a birthday card. So it says happy birthday. Again, the only thing I did different is you'll notice that this whole piece is bumped up on dimensionals, which they suggested, but I also put a dimensional on the bottom of the planter. I glued it flat onto the piece that already had dimensionals, and then I put a dimensional down here just to hold it in place a little bit better. And for the inside, I took a strip that I cut off from the scraps of the die pieces that came in the kit, and I also used a 1/2-inch punch. Looks like this. It used to be Stampin' Up! Used to have them, and they were in the clearance rack for a really long time. But there's a lot of gold real estate around the happies in the punch outs, and so you'll see some more circles that I've used in other places as we go along. So that's card number 3. Let's start talking about the alternatives. The first thing I did was I looked at card number 1 and wondered what I could do differently to it. And what I did is I cut out this square, which is about 1.5 by 1.5. And I used a little piece of the sheeting that came on the stamp set. And you know, the stamp set comes on this nice little thick piece, and then there's a thin piece that goes over the top of it. I take the thin piece off every time. I stamp my stamps on a piece of white cardstock, cover it with packing tape, and then I lay my stamps over it. So it's a nice way to hold them, and I get that little sheeting piece. So I glued that little sheeting piece behind the hole that I cut out, and also I used some of the gold from the around the happies, and I stamped a small vase using the bottle using the bottle punch from Stampin' Up. It's called Vintage Bottle Punch. And so I stamped it, bumped it up on dimensionals, and I glued a piece of the Orchid Oasis right over the top of the sheeting. I stamped Sending All Our Love right onto the card. And I added a half-inch circle on top of this stack of books, which now looks like a lidded box. And for the inside, I put one of the pots and I added one of the Coastal Cabana and the mixed foliage pieces. So again, sending all our love for a happy birthday, hope you feel better, whatever you want it to be. I really like the way this card turned out, and for the envelope, I took the sprig and I just pat it on 3 different stamp pads. I used the Orchid Oasis, the Polished Pink, and the Shaded Spruce. So I got that tricolor on one branch or sprig. Okay, I really like this card. This is probably my favorite card. Well, I don't know because I like them all. Okay, that's alternative 1. Now, still using that card base, here is something else that you could do with that card base. I took that card base and I stamped with the stamped off the edges all around with this stamp, and I used Shaded Spruce. Then I cut out a piece of, what is this called? I used the Fancy Flora Designer Series paper 6x6 that is in the annual catalog right now, or in the mini catalog. And I cut a 1.5 by 1.5 inch piece, bumped it up on dimensionals. I added a pot down here. I used one of the pieces from the kit here, stamped To an Incredible Woman, and I bumped it up on dimensionals. It already had a little circle here that's about 1/4 inch, so I used 2 of the 1/2 inch circles that I punched. And then I added 4 of the pastel adhesive backed sequins, and that's what this pack looks like. And I used all 3 of these colors in my samples, and the sequins come in a large size and a smaller size. I love these sequins. They're so easy to use, so I used them a lot in this with this kit. And for the inside, I simply stamped a Shaded Spruce sprig, and for the envelope, I did the same thing. So I tried to mimic on the envelope what I did on the inside pretty much of all of my cards this time around. So that is alternative card number 2. Now, moving to the second card base that we had in our kit, I created this card. And so I punched a Polished Pink decorative circle from this punch, and I used gold embossing. Here's To Another Year of Growth. And did you notice these 2 pieces? These are the I just cut around the extras. When you punch out your dies, you're gonna have some pieces that look like, hold on just a second, let me get this out. you know, when you cut out or punch out, you have this piece. And what I did is I just cut around these pieces. So that gives you, look at all those extra pieces that you have to play with. So I just cut around them and I glued them flat onto the card, and I glued those on first. Then what I did is I took my sprig and I used shaded spruce and I stamped it this way and a couple of times this way. Then I bumped up the decorative circle on dimensionals, and then I used 3 of the sequins here and 2 down below. Oh, and I started out by brushing on polished pink all across the window. So used my these brushes, and I just went ahead and went over with polished pink. Then I glued these on. Then I stamped these 3 sprigs. I put this on with dimensionals, and then I added the sequins. So, and then for the inside, I took the sprig and I stamped it off the bottom and off the top. And happy is in polished pink, and birthday is shaded spruce. That card turned out cute. And for the outside, 2 sprigs of the shaded spruce. I hope you like that card. All right. So now the second card alternative using that same card base is I took polished pink and shaded spruce, and because we don't have a Coastal Cabana, I used a light mint macaron, and I used the light orchid oasis. And all I did for this one is I just squiggled all across them. I just took my brush, I used the thicker side, the blender side, and I just went over it randomly. I did a little bit of the pink. Well, actually, I did the shaded spruce first, a little bit of orchid oasis. Then I used the mint macaron, a little more orchid oasis, some of the polished pink, and then I went over some of the shaded spruce with the polished pink down here. So that's how I created the base, along with adding some of the dots from the stamp set. They look like this, across the top with polished pink. Then I added 3 of the sprigs just flat from the punch out dies. I used one of the pots that has the embossing on it, and I bumped it up with dimensionals. I used one of the middle-sized sentiment pieces, and I colored it with polished pink and then stamped on it with shaded spruce. And then I made a double bow and stuck it on the right-hand side with dimensionals right there. And for the inside, I just put the dots down the edge. So I really like this card, and for the outside of the envelope, the dots as well. So leaving the inside blank so I can add whatever I want to that card on the inside. Okay, so now for the third card base, I again used my, blender brush, and I actually covered the whole card with polished pink, just like this, all the way down. And I started in the middle and went out this way, so that if I went back and added more ink, I started in the middle and then I would go out. So the middle was a little clunky, but it didn't matter because I was using this piece to cover it. So it's glued flat. I glued one of the Coastal Cabana pieces in the back, and then I actually used 2 of the Orchid Oasis pieces, and I bumped them up on dimensionals so it gives it a little bit of dimension. I bumped the pot up with dimensionals and then stamped "You Deserve the Best" and glued it flat across the top of the pot. And for the inside, look at this. How did I do this? Well, again, when you have your extra pieces from your card kit, let's see, you're gonna have these little bits. And what I did is I cut those pieces with my snips, and then I could make it into a border. So I made it into a border and glued it onto the inside of my card. And for the outside of the card, I took my Stampin' Write markers, and I used Coastal Cabana, and then I used Shaded Spruce, and I used the Orchid Oasis and the Polished Pink. So I just made 4 quick lines, and I think it looks really cute. It complements the card really nicely, so it looks like that. Good? All right. So blender brush, blender brush. It's kind of a tongue twister, and I need to be able to remember what that's called, a blender brush. Okay, and the second card, using that same card base, I took and I cut 1.5 inches off of the front. And what I did is I glued it on the inside of the card. Then I used again my Stampin' Write marker and in Shaded Spruce, and I made a line and a line. So then I have my writing area. There's the card. And so after I cut 1.5 inches off, I glued it here. And then I took one of these pieces and just glued half of it onto the front of the card. I added the happy, the birthday. I added another little pot and 2 sprigs. And then I added some of the sequins. And for the outside of the card, I just did that same, or envelope, I did that same line. I think it was very effective. So, turned out really great. I like that card. So, let's see, what is that? Alternative 6. So, now we're on to 7. And if you're in my Paper Pumpkin group, then you are receiving an envelope and a white card base and another piece from the, what was that called? The Flora group cards. I don't know what it's called. Oh, I'll find it. Anyway, it's the 6x6 Designer Series paper, and it's cut by 4 and 5 1/4. Glued it on, and then I took and used a 3/4 inch piece that is 4 inches long, and I flipped it over. So this is the same paper as this paper. It's just the other side to make the base or the table. Then I added my pot, and then I put some of the foliage into the pot. I added some of the blue sequins this time, and I stamped "To a Wonderful Mother." So this would be a beautiful Mother's Day card. I took another 3/4 inch by 5 1/2 all the way up top to bottom, and I glued it on the inside, and I added 3 of the sequins. So it makes for a lovely card. And for this card, I did a stencil. And I created my stencil again from the piece that we punched out the dies. I just laid it on here, and I added, I used polish pink, and I went down this way. So I didn't go around in circles because I didn't want to wreck the little edges. So going down, it worked really well. I didn't have any trouble whatsoever. And then you can see I have some little tiny dots on here as well. And those were just made with my Stampin' Write marker, Shaded Spruce. I just thought it added a little something to it. And for the back, I did the same thing. I stenciled it, and then I added some dots of Shaded Spruce. So there you have a beautiful Mother's Day card with a stencil technique. And we have one more card, and you're going to laugh at me, but I really wanted to get this, video done, and so I was hurrying away around the edges of the Crystal Cabana. This piece, there is a lot of real estate that you can use, and so what I did is I again used that 1/2 inch punch, and I also used another old Stampin' Up punch that was a little daisy punch. I think it was just called a flower punch. It's small, and you could use any punch or die that's small, but I used that real estate around here. And what I got is I started with a white card base, and I laid out my flowers the way I wanted them, and then I added some of the dots. I added one of the little potted pieces over here. I stamped the happy here with Shaded Spruce, and I stamped birthday with polished pink on one of the small sentiment pieces, and I bumped it up on dimensionals. And I wanted to show you what I did is I laid out my flowers and dots where I wanted them, and then I took my Take a Pick tool and I picked them up, put some glue down, and then laid it back down. Picked it up, put some glue on, and laid it back down. That way I kept everything where I wanted it, and I stamped the happy first before I laid those pieces down. Then I added some of the sequins in the pink this time. I wrapped a piece of twine around it and tied a bow. And I thought, oh, what a happy card. And then I opened it up and realized I had put it on the envelope. I'd used the envelope instead of the card. So what did I do? Well, I made lemonade out of lemons. So I cut my card base and I glued my envelope onto the back of my card base. I added a little line on the inside of the card base. I took the other piece of the card base and I actually put it inside the envelope. And I thought, oh, well, that's kind of cute. You could put a secret message on here. You could use double-sided tape and put a gift card in here. And you could just make it a gift this way. And if you put your gift in here and then closed it up and then tied it around, then you've got like a gift and a card all in one. So the people that are making the card with me on the 7th, though, April 7th on our Zoom, will be making it on a regular card base. And you've got that in your little kit that I'm sending to you. So there you go, making lemonade out of lemons. And you've got 8 cards. You've got 26 minutes. And the last thing for my gals, I just wanted to share with you that this month you are getting from me an envelope that looks like this. So be watching for it in the mail. It's full of lots of goodies. And I'll see you on April 7th on our Zoom. Have a great night.